All right, we're live with Headspace Live. Thank you guys for joining. If you're watching this from the very beginning, if not, you'll miss this piece. Today, it's going to be a good one. I have Ty Thompson, brother from another mother, my actually brother-in-law, and he's an amazing guy. We're going to talk about quite a few things, but let me just give you a little bit of background. So Ty is a COO. He's a business consultant. He's a speaker. He's past president for the Colorado PGA, so he has all these dimensions of expertise, character, just an amazing human being. So I think you're going to enjoy talking to him. If you're watching this live, you can leave us your comments and questions actually in real time. If not, you can just leave them in the comments. We're always trying to answer every question. It's going to be a good discussion. So welcome to Headspace. Ty, what's up?
Hey, glad to be here.
Dude, we've been wanting to do this for a long time. I'm glad it's coming together.
That's exactly right. We've talked about this numerous times, and here we are. Hopefully, we can bring some value to your listeners and inspire one another.
Me too, my friend. Okay, so let's start with this. Let's start with a little bit of a backstory because you're up to really, really cool stuff, and I'm super proud of you. And we sort of go back and forth and catch each other up on the stuff that we're up to. But can you give the audience a little bit of the backdrop of who Ty Thompson is before you became this prominent golf pro, past president of the Colorado PGA? I brag on you all the time, right? So, but give us the backstory. I'm really interested in how do you become that person that who you are now.
You know, what a great question. And it's been a journey. Boy, it's you're talking 35, 40 years of history, but it really started in an environment I grew up in, and we didn't have a lot growing up. And so trying to come up with a plan to make something bigger of my life than I had in front of me. So, I started working when I was 12 or 13 years old. And it really started at 14 years old. I remember creating this plan and this dream of where I wanted to go in life. And it started with, I'm going to go in the military and I'm going to get money for college through the Army College Fund. And then I'm going to go to college to a 4-year university, and then I'm going to become a golf professional. So my dream to be a PGA golf professional started very young.
Really?
Wow. I worked at a golf course during challenging family times. It was my escape. It was a place for me to feel safe. I would ride my bicycle there through the cemetery, 2.5 miles, and I would be there from sun up till sundown.
And where was this?
This was in southern Idaho. Okay. So about 2 hours south of Boise. Uh-huh. And I was either working at the course, playing at the course, or practicing. And it just created a great passion for me to learn. I got a lot of responsibility because I was in a small town. By the time I was 15, I would open the golf shop and get the money out of the safe and start everything up and get everything going. So these opportunities to be kind of a business-minded person were given to me very early. And so, but what I didn't have was resources and much capital. So the military gave me that opportunity to travel the world and to gain some money, to gain education. I knew that's where I needed to go to become a golf professional. And, I fulfilled that dream, but it was after almost 8 or 9 years serving in Christian ministry. So I did go to the military. Mm-hmm. Loved it. Lived in Germany for 2.5 years. Had some phenomenal experiences there. Learned a lot of great leadership principles. Got out of there and moved back to Boise. Went to school at Boise State and studied international business and marketing emphasis. But I got involved in ministry, and my wife and I got an opportunity to work in ministry and did that till we were almost 30. And we started having a family, and it was at that time we took a lot of those skills. Boy, if anybody who's gotten to serve in nonprofit or ministry work gains a skill set that's just unparalleled to other environments.
Yeah, it's the soft skills that they're called soft, but they're not. There's nothing soft about them, in my opinion. Right.
That's exactly right. So, we took all those skills, but this burning desire was still in me. That I wanted to be this golf professional. I remember talking to my wife, Kathy, and I said, I don't want to be 50 years old and regret I didn't go after the dream that I had. It's funny. I I just turned 50 this last year. So here we are. I don't regret any of it. It's been this life journey of pivoting and growing and developing. And so I went into the golf business, which was risky at 29 because you start out with no money. I think I was making $7 an hour to rebuild a career. So we can talk a little later about some of the things we learned in there, but we had to have a real specific plan to survive, to make it, and then come out the other side. It couldn't just be a hope and a dream. We had a strategy. We literally had an Excel spreadsheet we built to make the career transition. And so I spent about 15 years in day-to-day operations. During that period, I got involved in governance and committee structure and board governance, and ended up running as one of the officers of the Colorado PGA. So I spent 8 years as an officer. The final culmination of that is you serve as the president of the Colorado PGA and represent on a national level. So that was super exciting. And then a number of years ago, I left the day-to-day side of golf and went more into consulting, keynote speaking. I had some other opportunities in real estate and in operations with people I knew in the golf business. And so I've been pursuing those. And here we are today at 50, empty nesters, and really just starting another cycle. It's like this cycle regenerates. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that in your life, where we all tend to have a period that we cycle through. Mine's about 7 years. I've looked back over my life and I have like 5 or 6, 7-year cycles, and it's how it works.
So I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. That's interesting.
How I developed this and seen, and now that I've recognized it, I've used it as a real strength.
So give me the 7-year breakdown. Can you do that? Because I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's really intriguing. I've looked back over my life and I've looked at the time that I was in the military and education, the time I was in the ministry. And what I see is the first 12 to 18 months is restructure and rebuild. So when I go into any situation, operation, I've taken over country clubs, running them. I've gotten into, like I said, governance or ministry. That first 12 to 18 to 24 months is breaking down what has worked in this situation, what hasn't worked, and how do we build strategies. It's a real exciting time, but you're dismantling, you're rebuilding, and then you're spending the next 2 to 3 years executing.
Yeah.
And then the next 1 to 2 years for me is a transfer. It's essentially exiting myself to where I'm a builder, I'm a strategist, I can see what needs to happen, and then I want to turn it over to an implementer or an executor. I don't do well doing the same thing over and over for a long, long period. But I've seen that when I tried to shorten that cycle, sometimes you would shorten the effectiveness.
So you mean the transition from the initial build to turning it over to an executor? And that's right. You're saying what, 2 years, 24 months?
It seems to me that I can get systems and processes built and put into place in about the first 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
And then you're moving into more of a leadership advisory to where your team is trained, they understand the expectations, and you're now leading very proactively.
Okay.
You know, you're not reacting to problems and fixing them all the time. You're driving things from one level to the next level to the next level. Then that last phase is really turning that leadership piece over to another individual.
Yeah.
And at that point, Ty needs to find something else that pushes his buttons and moves him and motivates him. So we either need to remodel something, we need to build something, or we need to find something else to do. But I've just learned that about my cycle, but I've seen it in other people. And what I find is when people get to the end of their cycle, or they get stuck in part of their cycle, they start to degrade in their performance. They start to decline, and then they become unhappy. And then sometimes they make really rash, swift decisions that become very penal to themselves. They hurt themselves financially. They hurt themselves professionally. Maybe they just get mad one day and quit their job. Well, now they're in a bind. I learned in this whole cycle was to figure out how to pivot responsibly and to do it from a sense of a reverse engineering, to look and say, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I want to be to here. How do I reverse engineer my way from where I'm at now? And
Right.
I know you've done this. You've had periods of your life where you're like, I want to be here, but I'm here. And how do I build the steps to get there? And you start the transition and the phases. I'm in that in some of my life now. I have certain areas that I want to, wind down and phase out, and other things I want to bring in and
Yeah,
phase.
yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. But I think I'm not as good as you are. I think you are much more. I think we're similar in that we are both builders, and we start something new, we get excited about it, and
Yes.
we love starting something from zero to nothing to something. I think both of us are very similar that way. Now, the way we're different is that I think you're much more aware on the reverse engineering piece than I am, and so I sort of lag behind you, and then I go, oh, now I think I sort of get it, right? But it's like, okay, it's a little late, but better late than never. So, is there a third step after the passing it on? What's the third step? Is there a third phase after that? After you sort of release it a little bit and pass it on to somebody?
Yeah, I think that one is really about legacy. That last piece is, can you step away and
Altogether, yeah,
can you step away and it continues, or does it fall apart once you've stepped away? Like
yeah,
in the beginning, you're very integrated into it happening.
right,
You're very much on top of it, and then you start to step away, but it happens because of your influence.
right,
And when you then leave, the question is, will it maintain because of your legacy? Whether it was a church you were leading, whether it was a business you were running,
yeah, yeah,
whatever those pieces were. And it doesn't mean it's exactly the same. It means that the principles you left behind,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
love to call it process driven and personality enhanced. And
mm,
oftentimes companies and organizations are personality driven. And when
right,
the personality steps aside, the thing crumbles.
yeah,
But if
yeah,
you step back and say, what are the processes and the systems that really make it run? And
yeah.
then let that personality enhance that and
And
make it even
do you
better.
think? Do you think? I agree fully, and I love what you're saying. Do you think that the established culture is also a system, or is that something separate?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. I love this question about culture, because to me, culture, it's the result of the behavior you accept and you do not accept.
Right. Okay.
You don't make culture. You don't go say, our business culture is this. What you accept in the inner workings from day to day will be the result. That will be your culture.
That'll be the culture. Yeah.
That'll be the culture. I mean, you've heard that whole phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes, I have, and
And
I
that's the
agree.
whole point, is you have to have a culture model,
Yeah.
but then you have to train behavior and execution to that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's your highest performing people, if they're violating and straying from that culture, if you don't address it, your culture will change. Doesn't matter what it says on the wall,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what the posters say. The culture is the result of the behavior we accept and the behavior we don't accept.
So can I ask you something more personal? I guess you're such an accomplished guy. I mean, I've always loved just how the level of excellence that you have in your life. And we've known each other for a long time, right? We are
We
married
sure
to two sisters, and we see each other a lot over decades now. And both of us come from sort of challenging backgrounds, right? Challenging, limitations, poverty. I come from all kinds of like civil unrest problems, civil war, military coups, things like that. You don't come from that, but you do come from a lot of challenging family contexts and stuff like that. You don't come from money, you don't come from privilege. And I believe sometimes this is the greatest gift, because hardship early on either can paralyze you and sort of shrink you, or really strengthen you and equip you and give you all these gears, insights, gears. Anti-fragility is a term that I love. You become stronger because of the challenges. And I see that a lot of that in you. And what I'm curious about is, do you think about those things? Do you track those things? Can you like point your finger I can do this, or I can think this particular way because of these 3, 4 things that were in my life early on that were challenging at the time.
I think I understand where you're going from here. If I get off track, you redirect me. But
Yeah.
I resonate a lot with what you're saying, because I think about it with my own kids who are turning 20 and 22 this year. And there's times where I feel they're not getting what I got because I have something better.
Yeah.
The life I've given them is better, more comfortable, more planned, more opportunity, more resources. And I constantly tell them, you need adversity to be
Yeah.
able to become strong.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to sometimes just fight and figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go back to those points. One, my parents divorced when I was very young. I was 3 years old, and at
Right.
the time, I remember going in the back judge's chambers, and the judge asking me and my older brother who we wanted to live with, my mom or my dad.
Oh,
I think they've
that's not
since learned
good.
that's a very bad
It's a very
process.
it's a very bad process. Yes.
So
I
I
was asked that question as well. I was 14 though, but yeah, not
so
by a judge.
3 years old, we both wanted to live with our dad, and we never saw our mom again. So it's been 47 years.
Oh man.
And my dad remarried shortly after that. And then when I was 10 years old, they split up. And my stepmom moved in with a guy, and they're doing drugs, and it's a mess. And he ends up committing suicide. And then my stepmom moves back in with us. And it was pretty close around to this time where I made this recognition or this resolution of, I'm going to have to rely on myself if I'm going to get out of this mess, because I don't have stability. When I think I have stability, it gets ripped out from underneath me. So I'm just going to start working. And my poor dad was broke. He worked 4 jobs at a time. At times, he was a firefighter, and he just tried to survive. But it was tough. I mean, I remember working farming right before I went in the military. And one time I worked 7 at night till 7 in the morning for 14 days and handed my check over to my parents to pay the mortgage.
Jeez.
And I'm so grateful for that lesson, actually, because it helped me not be entitled. It helped me to realize sometimes you have to do things that aren't fair.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to do things that are for other people.
Right.
And, but I also realized I couldn't be loyal to a bad situation. And that's where I see a lot of people get stuck. They say, well, I'm not going to, they feel like they're turning away from their family or leaving their friends if they decide to move away and go to another city or
Mm-hmm.
go to another location. So to me, the military was my exit strategy, and I never returned. I never went home when I was enlisted. I called, but it's like I had to be willing to almost sever uh, a scenario in a situation that was going to hold me back.
Because
And I
it was sort of toxic, right? Was there some sort of a codependence vibe to it or something like that?
there was just not a mindset to grow and
Right.
learn and
Yeah.
get better, and how do you improve yourself, and you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
and some of my siblings have been stuck in that, and here they are 20, 25 years, and they're still struggling because they embrace the, oh, I'm going to stay here. And I've been accused of, abandoning my family, or
Mm-hmm.
leaving my friends, or why didn't you stick around? And but to me, I was like, in the end, you're accountable for your own life, and you have to be willing to make some changes. So sometimes people are in a job and they need to pivot. It's time to move into something else, but they're so unwilling to disappoint the people that they work with,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
unwilling to disappoint the neighborhood they live in, that they handicap themselves from
Yeah.
elevating and moving to that next level.
I think that's a really interesting distinction here. Um, when I coach my clients, and they're usually professionals who want to just have an excellent, extraordinary life for the for the long haul, right? High performance life. And I sort of when I touch upon the relational aspect, it's one of the things that I sort of address. Um, it's even painful for me to share that because I go, how do you tell somebody? Because I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but how do you say, look, it's one thing to leave a unhealthy working environment behind, and sometimes that can get toxic and codependent and all of those things, and people overstay. I get that. It's a whole different category of problem when it's blood, when it's family,
Hmm.
right? and it's painful. It doesn't go away. You don't stop being family,
That's right.
and how do you process that internally? How do you process that internally? Because you see also the contrast with, let's say, a sibling who just didn't make that move for whatever reason. How do you sort of, because it's, I think you can move on, make decisions, and get outcomes that are different and better, but it still does it haunt you a little bit, or do
You
you
know,
just sort of, that's it, I'm done?
I think in some ways, I came to the to the recognition that it's like when you think of a swimming pool. Okay, a swimming pool usually starts at the shallow end and then ends up at the deep end.
Yeah.
And Kathy and I have this conversation a lot, that you have to recognize sometimes the shallow end is the deep end for some people.
Right.
And so the investment that you make to them as your father, your sibling, if you continually try to be in the deep end relationally and they only know how to be in the shallow end, you constantly have frustration.
Yeah,
And
it
so
doesn't go
you
away.
almost have to match where you can have enough uh, boundaries and
Yeah.
enough limitation in there to where you say, I'm willing to talk to you, we get together or whatever it means, but I'm not going to sacrifice my opportunity just because we're family.
Yeah.
But people do it in business too. They see it as, well, this is my family. That'd be
That.
wrong for me to leave. I'll give you a good example. When I left the full-time ministry, it was a time in a church I was in that was about 1,200 people, and we led one of 5 major regions. And we had hundreds of kids in our youth and family ministry in 45 of the 65 high schools in that metro area.
Right.
And there were about 30 full-time people, and there was a decision to reduce some of the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew folks were going to lose their jobs, and I was having this nagging feeling of wanting to pursue this dream in the golf world, in this golf business. Well, here's the problem. They didn't want us to leave our position. The people we led didn't want us to leave our position. My wife didn't want to leave her position. And yet I had this feeling that if I am not honest with what I feel about and be willing to disappoint, hurt some folks in a sense, that I could not live with the fact that some of my friends were going to lose their job when that's all they wanted was that job. That's all they wanted to do was to serve. So I remember meeting with a mentor of mine who was a senior pastor, and I telling him, and he just sat there and cried. And you
Mm.
want to talk about feeling horrible. He
Yeah.
cried because of our friendship. He cried because of our partnership in what we did. But I had to be willing to go through that. And it was really hard for me because I think of my upbringing. Um, I've come to kind of live with the sense of an avoidance of pain,
Right.
and so knowing that I have to go through that. But I look at where things elevated over the next couple of decades because of that. Um,
Yeah.
was incredible. So, but yeah, so sometimes you have to go through those, and it's very challenging to pivot. That's what I talk a lot about is what's your pivotability?
Yeah.
What's your skill set? Where can you go from there? Um, so that was a good example of what you're saying about
Mm-hmm.
having that emotional bond.
Yeah, that's right. Do
Hmm.
you feel like, I want to hit on some of the talking points that we sort of both wanted to talk about a little bit. So I like really like went on the tangent here, but I'm just curious, right? You described something that sort of resonates with me when you were sort of working on the golf course at age, what, 13, 14, as an escape, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I remember something I think was parallel because I was a refugee. We moved like 4 different countries by age 7. I was in this new place. It was like inside a whiplash, right? A child really wants stability and to fit in and structure and nurturing environments. But I was in this, like I was growing up in Africa, like this is my 4th country. It's 7. I'm 7 years old. I don't speak the language yet. I'm trying to learn it. It's very paralyzing. And what I did it sort of imprinted in me something as an escape that I wonder if it was sort of similar to yours, is that I would bury myself in books and I would just disappear into a book, and my imagination was my world. That was my escape. and I would read for hours on end. And actually, as a matter of fact, I had like a dresser, a huge dresser, and there's like a second part of it, like a almost like a second story to the dresser, and I would just climb up there, and I would have this little, like a little cave, a boy
Yeah.
cave, and I would just sit there for hours and read all kinds of books. And my imagination was my escape. And I feel like that was the beginning of a creative, what eventually became a creative career in on all kinds of things, in music and marketing and speaking and writing, all of that. But it was seeded out of an escape, out of sort of a harsh, reality, and then eventually it sort of found its way up into the sun as something that was beneficial, helpful, as almost like a superpower. And it feels like it was something like that for you. Like you're a 14-year-old boy escaping from a harsh reality, and golf is there as a safety net, maybe as an inspiration. What was it like?
Yeah, I think it was a positive environment to
Okay.
find,
Uh-huh.
in a sense, mentorship, and the dream of how to run business, how to impact people.
Uh-huh.
Because the golf pro that I worked for, he owned most of the operation, so it was his operation. So you're watching
Oh,
what he
okay.
does, how he, runs the merchandising or runs the tournament operation. But you also realized very quickly that people come to the course to escape what they don't like. So they're leaving work, they're leaving
Oh,
a situation, they're leaving a bad family, and they're coming there to have happiness, to have some.
yeah, 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 yeah.
We used to always say, people come here happy. Your job is to make sure they leave happy.
That's
You know,
right.
it's not like going to the dentist,
Yeah.
like we're dreading it the whole time. But so you saw that people just couldn't wait to get there, to see their friends, to hit balls, to go play.
Yeah.
The time they wouldn't even play. They would just be, practicing and visiting. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just an environment I didn't have, which was a very, strong social.
Yeah.
But I wasn't the reader type, but I
Mm-hmm.
was the dreamer type. So I
Okay.
was always scheming some plan, like, how can I buy rental properties? What do I need to do to get money to be able to create passive income, or cash flow? Or how do I build a job that can then cap on top of another job? And so what was amazing in my town is we got our driver's license when we were 14. And so, you're eighth graders driving to school and leaving for lunch. Can you imagine that? And
Oh my
so
gosh.
we were pretty free. So
Yeah.
we weren't really stuck at home. We could just, jump in a vehicle and drive and go see friends and go hunting. We would do all kinds of things. I lived in a small town. And so for us, it was a lot about dreaming. We would, talk with friends about how are we going to get out of here?
Yeah,
How
yeah, yeah.
create a plan, and what are we going to do to, you know, better ourselves, or, not be stuck in this. And so
Uh-huh.
I think it was more of that. It was the people around you trying to dream. And so
Yeah, yeah.
you got around that, and it was really exciting. But I think because of that, I became very calculated. I research a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and when I was about 30, I had a mentor sitting across the table from me, and he said, hey, do you mind if I shared an observation about your life? I said, sure. He said, it seems like you live your life in the avoidance of pain.
Ooh,
I
that's
said,
valuable.
I said, I don't see why you would say that. And he's like, well, you just seem to like really be very deliberate if you're going to like engage in a relationship, or you're going to, start an opportunity. It's just a slow, I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock, I'm up, I'm looking into something. I don't want to make a bad decision or see something. So it was the start of my life starting to realize that I was navigating maybe around painful pieces. And another mentor friend of mine who you happen to know, he said, the problem when you try to avoid pain and you limit pain, he said, imagine you have a band of your emotional experience, and enjoyment and excitement's up here, and pain and suffering is down here. He said, you can't limit the pain and the suffering without limiting the
The
excitement.
enjoyment. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh,
That's brilliant. That's
I
great
don't
insight.
I tried to argue with him. I'm like, no, I can get the enjoyment and limit this stuff. He said, no, it's a capacity thing, and you're either going to close it or open it.
And I'll be numb, and you will not enjoy fulfillment, and joy, and delight, and all of those things. So, yeah, that's right.
So it was a great insight to those pieces. But the other piece I would like to comment on is I really started to realize that a lot of people that thought others were lucky. Have you ever heard the phrase "luck is when preparation meets opportunity"?
Yes, I have.
That's a phrase that really stuck with me from a young age to say, luck is not about just happenstance. My job is to prepare.
That's right.
My job is to prepare. So I need to work hard. I need to educate myself. That's why I went to school. I got a degree. I went back and got an MBA. Why? Everyone in the golf business says, what are you doing? Why would you get an MBA in the golf business? It's so unnecessary. I said, because I just want to keep learning. I want to keep growing.
Yeah.
Well, the real estate business I own now, what I own because a member of the club where I was a golf pro saw me go back to school and get an MBA. He saw me on the finance committee and the strategic plan. He came and said, I want to sell you one of my businesses and I want to carry the note for it because I've seen what you've done in continuing to learn and better and grow. That's lucky. That's getting lucky. People say, oh, Ty, you're lucky that you got that business. No, my job was to be prepared.
And that's exactly right. Yeah.
So
okay. So this is great. This is a great segue. Now, before we go into the segue is into building strong networks. And I've always admired you on your capability to just bond with people and for them to recognize things in you. So I want to get to that, but I want to put a plug. I have 2 plugs in each episode about 2 things that can really benefit the audience. And the first one is about this exponential scorecard that I developed that helps you be self-aware. And what you talked about is basically this heightened self-awareness, a proactive view of life that most people just don't enjoy. So I want to play this short video and we'll come back to the networks. Do you want to become more self-aware and clear about your goals? Try our free exponential score. In just 5 minutes, get a high-level picture of where you stand in key life dimensions. Get your personal life score at exponential.life/score. There you go. So it's a great tool, by the way. So if you're watching this, it's absolutely free. And it'll give you this incredible report in your inbox in like 5 minutes. So let's talk about building strong networks real quick, because I've observed you over the years connect to like amazing people, and they just pay attention to you. Like you would send me like I think you're golfing with Iggy Pop at some point. Was that a thing? I think.
Oh, that was with Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper, sorry, not Iggy Pop. So, and I was like, who golfs? First of all, why are you golfing with Alice Cooper? Second, does Alice Cooper golf? I mean, it feels like the opposite of what Alice Cooper would do, right? And obviously, it's a persona. I get it, but it was just hilarious to see that picture. All right, so tell me about the networks. Tell me how you attract these amazing people into your life, and how they're just fascinated by you. They recognize something in you, and I just wonder how did you develop that?
What a great question. And yeah, playing with Alice is phenomenal. And he's actually a fantastic golfer.
Is he? Oh,
I think the last time I sent a picture of us playing, I shot 1 under and he shot 1 over. He plays 6 days a week. So he said it's what saved him from his addiction to alcohol and drugs, was he had to substitute with something else. But he's an incredible man. And honestly, the only reason I have a relationship with him is because of my connection and relationship with Callaway Golf. So Callaway's been a sponsor of mine for 15 years, and they sponsor Alice. He did commercials for them probably 12, 15 years ago. And there's a good example right there that network, when he comes to town, Callaway called me and said, hey, you want to play with Alice? And so through that time, became friends with he and his band and, different players. So, but I think the thing I learned in networking was you have to put yourself in the right environments. So that's the first key. I see people, they tell me, I don't really know anybody. And I said, well, what spheres of influence are you a part of? Well, I just go to work, and then maybe I go to church. Okay, well, that's all your network's going to be. So first thing is identify, once again, this reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? I remember when I went into the golf business, we have a spring and a fall major meetings with the membership. So I would go to these meetings and I would reverse engineer. Where do I want to be? I want to be the director of golf at a green grass private country club.
Okay.
Somewhere in the country. So I said, it's going to take me X years to get there. Who are the people I need to meet and get in that sphere of influence in order to get there? So I would go to these meetings. So first of all, you got to get in the right environment. So a person's got to ask themselves, where are the people that I need to build a relationship with in order to move forward? So the second thing I learned was, don't just go to those environments. You have to be very intentional. So I would go to these meetings and I would meet, my goal was to meet 5 people very intentionally. So I would even pick out like, oh, these are past presidents of the Colorado section. These are past award winners I really respect. And then I would want to go introduce myself. And my goal was to just make an introduction, say who I was. I really respected what they did and would look forward to having a future relationship with them. So nothing's worse as when somebody introduces themselves and then they talk your ear off for 15 minutes. You've just made a bad first connection. So you want that brief connection.
Okay.
And then I had a mentor teach me, then go back maybe a week or two later and send an email and say, I really appreciated being able to meet you. I was wondering if I could ask a question on this or have a connection. And so you start to build this relationship. Now, golf innately has a superpower, and it's very well known. It's why a lot of lawyers play golf. It's why business people play golf. When you get to spend 4 hours on the golf course with somebody, you're almost best friends at the end of the round.
Yeah, you build trust. That's right.
You build that trust, and honestly, you see the character of somebody.
Huh.
Are they losing their mind and slamming their club? Are they cheating as you're playing? Are they bad mouthing other people? You learn a lot about people. So that innately gave a great opportunity, but it was very.
So did you do some research about those people in advance, like a little bit deeper? You go, okay, this is definitely somebody I want to at least say hi. So did you strategically go, okay, let me get at least some color around, so that I don't just go, hey, let's take a selfie, kind of. I mean, that would be just very deflating, right?
No, I would walk up to somebody and say, hey, I just wanted to congratulate you. I noticed you won this award for Teacher of the Year last year.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty incredible. What did you need to do in your career to do that? And when you put somebody like that into a mindset to be a mentor to you in a very quick snippet, they love it. People talk about themselves. They love to talk about their successes. But as people progress, they actually love to give that knowledge back to somebody else. So give them the opportunity.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you can't give somebody value, give them the opportunity to mentor you.
Mm-hmm.
But you compliment them. Everyone loves a compliment, like, oh, wow, you noticed, thanks. And so over time, I built this network. This is just with golf. So I'll lead this up to one key story is I was an assistant at a club. And when you're an assistant, you're trying to build a network, and you usually go from one club to another club to another club. So I ended up with 2 job opportunities. And this was 20 years ago. And I think one of them I was going to make $40,000. And the other one I was going to make $62,000. And at the time, I'm broke. I have a family. I'm making very little money. And I ended up turning down the higher paying job to get into the network of the leader who I would work for in the other club.
Uh-huh.
And he said, you come work for me. I guarantee you won't be here for more than a year because of my network.
Yeah, it's delayed gratification, a strategic thinking.
That job
approach. Yeah.
is a good part of what led me to becoming an assistant at Cherry Hills Country Club, a top 100 club. So you look at that network, you have to be strategic about who you build those relationships with, mm-hmm. And how you build into there. But a lot of people just don't get into the location. They don't get into the venue. They're afraid to join whatever that sphere of influence is.
Can I ask you a couple of specific questions about that? Because I think that is, I think this is something that is not done well. networking specifically, right? And a couple of questions. One is, how do you deal with insecurity, lack of confidence, imposter syndrome? Oh, I shouldn't talk to this person. I don't belong here in Cherry Hills. That sort of thing, because I think everybody feels that, because you actually don't belong. You're not there yet, right? But you have to sort of imagine belonging. In my experience, it's a big part of it. And the second question, in no particular order, is I feel like when people do networking, it's really overrated in the sense that networking is like, hey, what can I get out of it? And you sort of bombard people. It just feels inauthentic. It feels ungenerous. But there's a way to do it where you have a mindset, a heart to offer value, to offer insights, and then what's the balance between that and not overdoing it, right? Where you like, look, I don't know you from Adam. Like, don't offer me, this and this and this, because this is too much, too early. Can you help me with some nuance on that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with those two things.
Well, great question. And I don't know if I'm the authority on that one, but I'll try some things that have worked for me. When it comes to that. So one is just try to avoid the salesy thing first, right?
Yeah.
People can tell if you're just trying to get something out of them, close a deal, get them onto a deal. You nailed it. I mean, bring value. How do you give people value? And what I find is to say, hey, do you have time for a 15-minute conversation to see if we can mutually benefit each other? So I think you have to start with seeing, who are you talking to? Someone who's above you in your career path, someone who's equal to you, or somebody who's below you. Once you identify that, the approach is different. So if somebody's relatively close, the idea is, hey, we seem to have similar skill sets, similar ideas. Would you be open to, let's share some ideas and see if we can both walk away with something that, makes us 1% better.
That's great.
If you're looking at somebody below you, that networking might be, hey, I'd love to pass on a few things if you want to. I've offered people and just said, hey, I'd love to give you a half an hour and help you, grow in what you're doing. I think what you're specifically referring to is, how do you reach up?
Yeah, that's right.
The one you're scared to talk to.
Yes, exactly.
One, you need to realize they've been where you've been. So they have felt the same imposter syndrome. Christian, you and I have talked. We have it. Yeah. We talk about it ourselves. We talk about keynotes. We talk about, I talk about your background. And I said, why would you ever feel that? Your background is so incredible. You're a star. You're this. And you're like, no. That's what I feel about you. And I'm like, mine's nothing special. So what I realize is they've all been through the channel we've been through. So you first of all have to put your mindset around that. Secondly, you have to have a support group, your tribe. You talked about that.
Yeah.
The people that are around you have to speak positivity into you so you have greater belief in yourself. I mean, that's why I would encourage people to be in your mastermind, in your cohort or whatever, be in someone else's. I'm in one with a company called The Purpose Factor with Brian and Gab Boucher, and it cost me money. Yes, it was hard to pull the trigger to spend the money, but those forums, those Facebook times, those live feeds, sometimes I don't even talk, I just listen, and it drives the imposter syndrome out of me. It gives me the courage to go back on and say, I do have something to offer to people, and don't be afraid. And guess what? You're going to be rejected. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about the no's. You're on the earth to find the yeses.
And everybody gets rejected, by the way. No matter how high you rise, everybody gets rejected.
There's always rejection. And so you have to tell yourself to embrace the no. I have a friend who said, my mission this week is to get told no 10 times.
That's a great positive outlook. Absolutely.
He said, I'm just going to learn how to deal with that. So, but you're not going to find the yeses if you don't wade through the no's. And it's not personal. So that insecurity, it hits us all. I mean, even podcasts. I mean, I guarantee you, all of us that go into a podcast, you're thinking, do I have my stuff together? Do I have my thoughts or my bullet points, or is it going to come across right? Is it going to actually, help anybody?
I had this podcast where I was interviewed by a tech leader and stuff like that. to his audience, a big audience. And then I sort of went with my heart, like, and then I sort of, we ended and we're done. And I text him like, dude, I feel like I was rambling. Like I was second guessing my whole thing and going, should we like redo this thing? It was just, I think it was terrible. And he goes, what are you talking about? It was great. You were sincere, you're authentic, you went with your intuition. I said, really? Because it just feels like it was just a rambling of a madman here. And anyway, so he talked me out of the imposter syndrome, but it happens all the time. It really does.
I've been there, and it's interesting. At 50 years old, it's almost as if I doubt myself more than the fake confidence of a 22-year-old. Like I remember being in my early to mid 20s, and it's like I got everything figured out.
Oh yeah,
I'm right. And
ignorance is bliss. Yeah.
The more you realize, the less you know. It's one of those things we do in coaching, where you talk about the levels of awareness. Have you heard this?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I love that. We teach it a lot in golf.
Unconscious competence and et cetera, that whole
exactly.
curve. Yeah.
Part of the levels, but it's like the older we've gotten in life, you understand that ring of knowledge. Have you ever heard of that one? The ring of knowledge. And so I think that's one is reaching up. But the other one is realizing that when most people become successful, they're a leader in your environment, they're at a point in their life and their career where they want to give back to somebody who wants to put some effort in.
Yeah.
So what they're looking for is someone who will listen, someone who's humble, someone who's willing to take action. Like there's some young PGA professionals that I coach and mentor at no charge, but I tell them these are the requirements, and we have, you're going to show up when we're going to show up. You're going to do the work that we talk about doing. There's investment. And so that's what I think, if you're willing to go in and tell somebody, I love where you're at in your career, I love where you're at in your personal life, would you be willing to give me a couple of hours and teach me how to do that? Most people would give that to you.
Yeah.
The other thing I've found that really works for me is I ask people for a limited, specific time to say, would you be willing to meet for 3 times for 45 minutes each? And they know there's an end.
Yeah. So you're setting the boundary so they don't have to.
That's right. Because nobody wants to take on a project that they don't know how to end.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they feel guilty of, like, I know for me, about 3 sessions with somebody is about what I can bring great value to somebody. And so I tell them, great, we'll meet for this time. But I've also realized if someone else knows there's an exit strategy to you entering into my life, you might have a better chance of entering. And then if they really like you, guess what? You get to stay.
Yeah.
So
that's fascinating. Yeah. So how do you, we have like maybe 5-7 minutes left. I want to ask you about, you already mentioned this whole executing a plan thing, and I think you're so much better than I am on that. I'm getting better sort of by now, right? But do you have any like rapid fire, quick takeaways from how do you create one that is aspirational, but maybe break it down into something so that you can sort of keep moving and hit it and execute on it in a realistic way? And also, and the second question, sort of secondary, you don't have to answer that one if you feel like you're in a role in the first one, is how do you combine plans? Because all of us have these sort of 3-4 things going on at the same time. And I think part of one of the challenges, even for me, is I have 3 or 4 or 5 things, both career, personal, parenting, marriage, friendships, philanthropy, all of that. And I sort of have to have a plan for all of them if I want to be a grown-up. And then it's a little hard to combine, right? To sort of integrate those. So that's probably the good word.
Yeah. What a great question. And what a very tough thing to do. I think it's cyclical. From what my experience has been, you have to continue to reinvent your ability to do it. But a couple of things that have really helped me is to recognize what your personality is. My personality is not a do this on Mondays at 9 a.m. every week at 9 a.m. and then do this on Tuesdays at 4. And I used to think there was something broken about me. Like, why can't I follow a disciplined schedule? But I would talk to people and they say, well, you are disciplined. You get so much done. You're so responsible, but I don't do any of it by a pre-planned, I'm doing this at this time, this. I'm very passion driven and emotion driven. So what I
That
realized
makes me feel better about myself when you say that, by the way.
it's true though. So I look and I say, these are the top 3 or 4 priorities in my life at this week. And I'm going to run with them as I feel excited. So it might be 4 a.m. It might be, 5 o'clock at night. And so to me, I've kind of learned my prime hours. That was the most important, is for me to figure out from 9 to 2, that's go time for me. I'm super effective. I'm super productive. And so I schedule most meetings. I schedule most things that I need to do from a project standpoint. I like to do alone stuff in the afternoon. So if I need to work on research or I need to do something like that, but
I'm in the opposite cycle, by the way. Yeah, like my first half of the day is for creation. The second half of the day is for communication. That's sort of my schema, but it's the actual opposite. It's really fascinating.
That's amazing. But what's interesting is, the people in our lives who they're so good at time blocking. They're like,
yeah,
Mondays, I do this, I do this, I do this. And I'm like, I can't do it. I've tried, I fail, and I don't wrong. But I accomplish a lot. And I do that because I keep prolific lists of priorities and notes. So I think a lot about, where do I need to be? And then I work myself backwards. Okay, by the end of September, I need to be here on this project. How do I get myself there? Okay, here I need to do this with my kids. How do I work myself backwards? And I think what happens is, a lot of times people are so reactive. They're always busy, and they're very disorganized. They're stressed and burned out, and they actually work hard but don't get ahead.
Yep, exactly.
Versus being able to think long term, sit down and get a plan and work it backwards. So how do you then make that work? I found one key thing. You have to have accountability.
Oh, okay.
So when I went into the PGA, it on average takes 3 to 5 years to get your PGA membership. I accomplished all of the schoolwork, about 600-700 hours of work, labs, 3 rounds of testing in 22 months.
Jeez.
When you have young kids to feed, you do desperate things. But I had a couple of guys that we would talk every week and say, what are you going to get done by the end of the week? And then we would talk at the end of the week. And I knew I had that accountability that we could. And then I watched other people who don't have that, and they just don't get there. So part of it is you've got to be able to reverse engineer where you're going. Everybody loves to dream about where they want to go.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have someone holding you accountable, like in your groups, I guarantee you, your cohorts and your tribes hold each other accountable.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the magic, is the cohort.
There were times that I guarantee you I would not have done my PGA work had I not known I was going to report to my friends on Friday and tell them what I was going to have done.
That's right. Exactly. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so this is, again, a great segue into my second plug, which is the Exponential Life coaching that is essentially designed around sort of creating this 4 massive shifts in your life and putting you in an environment with just people that will be rocket fuel for you. So let's watch this and I'll come back. I have some fun questions at the end. Are you enjoying this podcast and ready to level up? Discover high-performance coaching at Exponential. Visit exponential.life to book your free strategy call. You can tell us where you are, where you want to go. We'll give you free advice. And if it's a good fit, we'll tell you all the amazing results our clients are getting and all the details about Exponential. So I have 2 fun questions to land the plane here. One is, have you ever been offered a side gig as a stunt person for Kevin Bacon?
No, but I have been. I've been called Kevin Bacon, or compared many, many times, especially when I was in the military. And
it's uncanny. It's crazy how you could be brothers.
That's awesome.
Do you haven't been asked for an autograph yet, have you?
No autographs. I did have a guy in Dallas, Texas, shining my boots. I bought some boots. I was in the airport, and he's this old man shining my boots, and he looks up at me and he says, I know who you are, but I won't say anything. And I could not convince him that I wasn't Kevin Bacon.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome, man. All right, this is my second question. This is to tease our wives.
Okay.
What are the main differences between Kathy and Deb, in your
Oh,
opinion?
you think I would actually take that hook?
I was hoping.
Oh, goodness sakes. It's funny. They're almost the difference between us. Kathy's, very analytical, very black and white, very
Yeah.
organized and driven. Deb's very creative, very free flowing.
Yes,
Uh,
she is. That's right.
I'm not jumping on any else of that. We'll both be
Okay.
in the doghouse.
I tried, man. I tried. Okay. Dude, you're awesome. I love you, admire you. I just love your journey and everything. And I feel like, gosh, I gotta have you back, man, on a regular basis on Headspace because you are so eloquent, specific. Your life journey is amazing, from a lot of hardship to a lot of excellence, a lot of impact. And it's a privilege to be your friend and also to be related to you.
That's great. Do you mind if I close with a quick story?
Yeah, please do.
So one thing I want to encourage people with is that we don't have to be masters. You don't have to achieve mastery. You don't have to achieve the 10,000 hours to have great success and production in your personal and professional life. And I'll give you the example that I was fortunate to be around a young golfer when he was 13, 14, 15 years old, was able to be in his coaching circle for a couple years. Over the last year, he's won 3 times on the PGA Tour, the U.S. Open, Wells Fargo. He's the number 5 player in the world, Wyndham Clark. He's playing in the Olympics next week. I've known his family. He's a master. And he spent efforts and practices that I was unwilling to do. And yet I was very proficient to become a PGA golf professional and a club professional. And I look at that story, and sometimes I think folks are unwilling to try because they feel like they don't have the time, the money, or the talent to become a master. But I love to tell people we can be proficient. And proficiency, I think about with playing guitar. I love playing music, and I'm proficient in many musical instruments, but I don't have the talent, the desire, or whatnot to put in the hours to become a master. And I think some folks stay at less than proficient because they fear that they need to become
A
mastery.
master. Oh, that's great insight.
And maybe we'll come back another time and we'll talk more about that, about how does somebody become very proficient. I know that you know this. You see people that they've been afraid to start because they don't know if they can be successful. But when you talk to them, success to them is mastery.
That's right.
To me,
Mhm.
success is progress, not perfection.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great topic for our next discussion. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you
So
just set
awesome
us up.
to be on here and visit with you. I've got plenty of stories to tell about you that we can cover on another podcast.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. All right, my friend, I'll let you go. Thanks, guys. And thanks for being here, guys. If you loved this, forward it to somebody you know. Subscribe. Help us spread the word so we can bring more people in and have conversations as valuable and exciting as this one.